Hello, everyone. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Nirmit Soni. He is a senior exterior designer at Volvo-Sweden. And you must have known him from his Instagram page, which is called as TUGBOTZ. If you haven't seen that page, one should go and check it out right now because it has some really fascinating car exterior design projects. And we have the founder and the designer himself, Nirmit Soni. So, Nirmit, welcome to the Design Podcast. Thanks for taking out time on a Sunday for all of us.
Thanks, Ajay. Thanks for having me. I've been watching your podcasts and I really enjoyed them, and you're doing a great job. I think bringing out stories of all the designers from different walks and journeys, and that's great. Kudos to you.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Definitely, it's been a good journey till now. Thanks to all the amazing guests like you yourself who have been kind enough to take out their time and share their stories. So, Nirmit, today I have so many questions related to your journey, car designing, and you have been in this industry from 2007, if I'm not wrong, like 2007, 2008. So I have like many questions to you. But before jumping into all those questions, I wanna quickly dive into your childhood. Like, were there any prominent triggers or prominent, kind of signs which established the fact कि हाँ निर्मित मतलब आगे जाके क्रिएटिव फील्ड में ही जाने वाला है something like that was was there any kind of sign like that?
I think some of the usual ones which we all had, like everybody was sketching behind their books. गाड़ी
हाँ गाड़ी
क्लास क्लास में ड्रॉ कर रहे हैं, बैक बेंच पे बैठ के टीचर से डांट खाने के कर क्या रहे हो टाइप. Those kind of stuff were the usual ones. And firstly, I mean, I get the artistic or the designer side from my mom.
ah
So
is it
she's herself a very good designer and very good artist. So I think I got a lot from her, and I always saw her doing things and kind of tried to emulate her. But I think with cars in particular, I remember this is a story which is shared by like my mom and dad. Is like when I was three or something,
अच्छा
three or something, everybody was playing with dinky cars or whatever you could get your hands on.
हाँ
लेकिन I remember मतलब mom and dad they say कि they went to their friend's house, to uh, just meet them, मिलने के लिए जाते हैं उस हिसाब से. And I straight away went for the keyboard because there were
अच्छा
very few people at that point in my life. When I was
हाँ
three, my dad still had a scooter.
अच्छा
Very few of his friends had cars.
hmm
And I straight away went for the keyboard, and I could actually identify which car it was
oh
with the.
wow
That's what they say. Like somebody had a Fiat at that point, so I could kind of identify.
अच्छा
So I think that passion for cars and stuff kind of lingered on, and then combined with the artistic side of trying to draw them and build them.
okay
That kind of set the tone in the sense that I loved cars, but the word design for that matter, it didn't exist at that point. Didn't know what to do with it, but yes, it was established that I have a fascination for cars and drawing. And
was it just cars or anything else also you used to sketch or just cars like you were like completely fascinated by this particular car product only?
actually, not really. Cars was definitely something that happened later, drawing cars, but before that, the love for drawing in general
ah
was there. And I think if you remember in schools, हमारे inspection हुआ करते थे, या this sort of things हुआ करते थे. तो क्लास में हमेशा अगर कोई मैप बनाना है, स्पेशली जोग्राफिकल या कुछ ड्राइंग करना है, इलस्ट्रेशन बनाना है. आई रिमेम्बर मेरे क्लास में एक और फ्रेंड हुआ करता था, एंड वी हैड अ स्ट्रांग कंपटीशन. तो हम लोग टीनेज म्यूटेंट निंजा टर्टल्स ड्रॉ करते रहते थे, had a green sketch pen and this thing, and we were drawing like Michelangelo, Donatello,
wow
and stuff like that. So love for drawing was there, and later on I kind of went into drawing cars behind the books and stuff like that.
Mm. Most of us, like including me, so we have got into design after doing some sort of graduation. But you, on the other hand, you managed to do design as your undergraduation course only. So how did that happen? Like, where did you learn about designing as a career, and when did you decide कि हाँ यही करना है मुझे?
A very, very interesting and a very important question in my life, because
अच्छा.
if there were a few factors that weren't there, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Um, sheer, sheer, sheer luck, chance, and people looking out for me.
Really?
Uh, yeah, so it's quite ironic that I'm from Ahmedabad,
Okay.
but till 12th, I didn't know what an ID was.
अच्छा.
I had no idea. I was living in oblivion. I had no clue. I didn't even know that something like design or design education exists, and I was least bothered about it in a way.
Okay.
But as I said, my mom, who was like a radar for me, she was always looking out for me. And when I was in 12th, that's when I heard this name again and again from her,
अच्छा.
because she always dreamt of getting into, when she realized there is NID, she always dreamt of getting into NID, and she didn't manage to, like, she never had the opportunity to. And then she was always looking out for me, like, okay, that's where I see my son
Wow.
kind of going. And the other couple of people who I kind of credit for me being able to kind of choose that path earlier on, was a student in my school when I was studying. As I told you about inspections and stuff, right? So
हम्म.
different classes से जो भी drawing में अच्छा होता है वो हमेशा अपने, we kind of connect. So he was senior to me, 4 or 5 years. His name is Rigved Ghia. He is also
Okay.
an ex-NIT. A
अच्छा.
brilliant, never seen a more brilliant artist than him. He did animation at NIT. And on one chance day in a restaurant, we happened to, me and my mom were there in the restaurant. I was celebrating my birthday, I think, or something, and we happened to bump into him and his friend. And my mom just casually asked him, "What are you doing, beta?" And he said, I'm studying at NID." And my mom's like radar just went up like, and I was just busy having my noodles. I didn't even care what was happening. But she kind of connected with him, and he was gracious enough to say like, "Hey," my mom started talking to him, and next I remember in next 3 or 4 days, he invited me, he took me to an ID,
Wow.
and he showed me the whole college around. And the moment I entered an ID, I had found where I wanted to be. I was like, "Oh, okay, so this is where I want to be. This is where mm, now I know there was a Lego piece like missing, and I realized like instantly like, okay." And then that is when I found my bearing. This is where I need
Mm.
to kind of go.
Wow. Wow, man. Actually, yeah, I remember even when I visited NID for the first time, like it was after clearing the exam itself. But yeah, I can totally relate with that feeling that once you are in that zone, because the entire life you are doing something just out of passion or hobby, without knowing anything or any sort of selfish materialistic reason for it. And then when you be in that campus and when you realize that there is something like this exists and you can make a career out of it, that feeling, yeah, I can totally relate with it. It's very emotional sort of a memory for all of us designers, I guess, when we realize that there is something called as design.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in that era, um,
Oh,
as
yeah.
you as you said, it was just we didn't know that there's something called design. So
Wow. Awesome, awesome. So when you entered NID for your product design course, how was your experience? Because product design, it's a whole umbrella where you cover so many aspects of product design, and car designing being just one part of it. How was your experience? How did you explore, and how did you go about pursuing your passion for car design?
so things, from what I told you just previously, things kind of accelerated quite rapidly from then on. So from having no idea of what I want to do to having a very clear idea of what I want to do happened in like a
Hmm.
span of months. So
Wow.
then when I started looking at NID and I studied and I started visiting it more often to kind of keep on sensitizing myself, understanding what all disciplines are there, and trying to not even just look at NID as that's where I want to be. Even within NID, where do I want to be in order to achieve what I want to achieve? So I had no idea about colleges outside India. I never imagined that my parents, or I never thought that I'd ask my father or somebody to kind of, so I knew that NID is my only chance if I want to do car design. And within NID, it's only product design through which I can do something that's close to car design. So
Oh.
even before entering NID, I was very clear in my head that I want to do car design, and in order to reach that, the portal, the only possible gateway that I see is product design at NID. So while I did explore all the aspects, like there's no chance, there's no guarantee that you would get product design, right? Because when you go for
Hmm.
UG course, you have a preparatory year, and depending on how you perform, where your aptitude lies, that's when you get the discipline. So it was still a sort of a gamble, because had I not got product design, um, at that point I would have thought like that's over, sort of.
Hmm.
But no, I was things worked out, and I think it kind of paved the way, and then I entered product design, and I did everything that I had to do as a product designer to understand like simple product design or complex
Hmm.
product design, and doing all the projects, analytical drawing, and everything. So that was a huge sort of learning, but I always had my one part of my mind kind of knowing that is where I want to go.
Okay. Now that you touched upon this part, and undergraduate, postgraduate, I thought of covering this question ahead in the podcast, but let's cover it now itself because I have done my engineering before getting into design. And honestly, this might be my personal opinion, but honestly, I felt those 2.5 years, no, out of which half year, the last semester was an industry internship. So those 2 years, no, it just went in a glimpse. As in, it was, I didn't even realize because I came from engineering background. I think by end of second year, I was just understanding what is design and what are you supposed to uh, do in design and what are the like small nuances of it. So tell me something that you have done undergraduation, which is for 4 years. So does it help spending like 4 years studying design, or you feel even 2 years are good enough? What is your opinion?
It's a very tricky question because it's not just the number of years or the time that you spend. There is a lot of mental gymnastics that a person does, and
Hmm.
it really depends from person to person. I have seen people who have done uh, just 2.5 years and absorb whatever they wanted to absorb out of it, and actually end up becoming amazing designers. And I have seen people who have spent 4.5 years, do as much as they can and still struggle
Hmm.
to do it. But what I do think, and which is my opinion in general, is that it's I felt that the younger you are, the softer your brain is, right? Like
Hmm.
impressions that you gather, they stick
Correct.
like a wet concrete. So the
Hmm.
earlier you get into design, the the more your brain would be wired to think from a design point of view. So it definitely, if you're really clear about getting into design, then getting in younger and doing a 4 year course is great. Because as you said, when you do a post grad, I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly right now,
No,
but
no, you are. I think that perfectly makes sense. Yeah, please go on.
what I realized when you do post grad, after doing engineering or doing some other sort of discipline, is that the
Hmm.
first initial lot of time goes in unlearning,
Hmm.
in unlearning your your the things that the impressions that have been formed on your head, and that takes a while. And by the time you start absorbing and learning, it's kind of over, as you mentioned, right?
True.
But having said that, even as a, for example, I did product design, so we were never taught car design formally. I never learned car
Mm.
design formally, so it was all through self motivation, looking at whatever was available out there and pushing yourself. And I have to say, like, the maximum learning you do is actually on the job, or after you kind of graduate at whatever stage you are, and
Mm.
the number of years you spend in the industry, the challenges that you get, the pressure that you put in, and how you respond to that. You learn a lot, and all this education, whether you do undergrad or postgrad, you'll subconsciously, your mind does take some things in. Maybe you're not able to to instantly reproduce uh,
Mm.
immediately. But as you spend time, those learnings kind of keep working on the back of your head, and eventually, at some point, either depending on everybody's strength and aptitude and intensity,
Mm.
you will, if you persist with it, you do end up getting to a point wherein you are able to reproduce all those things.
Mm.
So yeah, I
I
mean,
think,
yeah.
yeah. I think you beautifully articulated it. I think it's little subjective, and I truly believe that design is a very subjective and psychological mindset. And if somebody cracks it, it might just take like 1 month for him to understand what is design, and it might be like even 4 5 years might not be enough for someone. So I think you beautifully answered that question. Now, just to establish the context for the audience, we are talking about year 2004. This was the time, I think, there was no design culture in India. The knowledge was not easily available. For example, YouTube and things like that. Today, if somebody even hear that there is something called as car design, and if he goes to Google and search for car design, he'll get like thousand different links which can educate him. But I think the time which we are speaking now, 2004, it was not that easy. मतलब अभी तो कॉलेजेस में इतने सारे विजिटिंग फैकल्टीज इंडस्ट्री से चले जाते हैं,
Hmm.
तो वो एक्सेस भी काफी इजी हो गया है. बैक देन आई थिंक वो एक्सेस भी काफी मुश्किल रहता होगा, राइट?
More difficult, or I think it's a very interesting question, and I just came back from India, and I was just thinking, and I was just discussing, looking back at how, why we did it, and I think sometimes ignorance is bliss. Us time pe there were not many people who knew about this, or if I remember correctly, हमारे time we were in the era where computers भी laptops भी होना, मतलब it had just begun at NID. मतलब I think
करेक्ट.
in my batch, maybe I was, or somebody, we were probably the first ones who got a laptop. But all we used to do in laptop is just surf the net. और नेट के ऊपर भी बहुत कुछ अवेलेबल नहीं था. आई रिमेम्बर द ओनली वेबसाइट वी यूज्ड टू हैव वाज कार डिजाइन न्यूज़, और उसके
हाँ.
अंदर एक वो पोर्टफोलियो सेक्शन हुआ करता था जिसमें वो थंबनेल्स हुआ करते थे, एंड उसको ही सेव कर करके डायरेक्टरी में सेव कर करके उनको स्केल अप करके पिक्सेलेटेड स्केचेस देख देख के हम लोग यूज्ड टू स्क्विंट आवर आईज एंड ट्राई टू टू सी दैट. थोड़े बहुत हमारे सीनियर्स थे जिनके प्रोजेक्ट्स से हम काफी इंस्पायर हुए थे, फॉर एग्जांपल एलियस अब्राहम, प्रताप बोस हिमसेल्फ, and stuff like that. So we had very few things to, but there was no TAD at that point at NID.
हम्म.
So, और जो लोग भी ऑटोमोटिव उसके अंदर घुसे थे, दे केम इन विद अ वेरी क्लियर आइडिया कि हमको कार्स करनी है, हमको ऑटोमोटिव जाना है. तो फॉर एग्जांपल मेरे बैच में जो भी थे, हम लोग 2-3 लोग थे, एंड हम लोग एंटर यूज क्लैरिटी के साथ में हुए थे, और हम लोग को पता ही था कि हमको कुछ, जब आपको यही नहीं पता ज्वाइन करने के पहले कि डिजाइन नाम की कोई चीज होती है, तो आप एंटर करके हमारी एक्सपेक्टेशंस बड़ी लो थी. तो हमें ये पता था कि हमको खुद ही फाइट करना. हम लोग एक्साइट हो जाते थे जब भी कोई चीज नहीं मिलती थी, तो एक दूसरे के साथ शेयर कर देते थे कि अरे यार हमने वेबसाइट देखी, अरे ये नई चीज चालू है, ब्लॉग स्पॉट चालू हुआ है, ये स्केचेस फ्री में मिलते हैं इतने बड़े बड़े, टू काइंड ऑफ लुक एट एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट. तो because there was nothing, the fire was genuine.
हम्म.
So it was more like, और fearlessness भी थी, क्योंकि हमको पता ही नहीं था कि हम लोग, there was no social media, there was nothing to kind of stand on or to kind of present yourself on. And more than that, even our professors and everything didn't understand what we were doing because they were like product design. I got reprimanded for drawing cars. He was like, dude, make a this is SPD, this is
Wow.
TCP, this is not your this thing. So because of, and this is human psychology, right? जितना हम लोग वो करते हैं, तो आप उतना ही लेवल और उतना ही आप पैशन के साथ में उस चीज को परस्यू करते हो जो चीज के लिए आपको मतलब सपोर्ट नहीं है या अवेलेबल नहीं है जस्ट वर्चुअल। और आज ये है कि वी हैव एवरीथिंग अवेलेबल, देयर इज मे बी एन ओवरलोड, you have too much available, and I think instead of trying to focus, maybe and this is just an opinion, maybe I'm wrong,
Hmm.
but it maybe sometimes distracts. It distracts from you trying to focus and find your own self,
Hmm.
because even before you get onto that trajectory there is something else out there that just kind of wows you away, and then you're like, okay, I gotta do this. So you don't get that meditative time to. So what I remember during our times was that even though we were doing our projects and product design, doing everything, we always had like insane meditative time. So things that you're talking about, like going to the mess and sketching in the night, or just hanging out with like-minded guys and people in the studio and kind of getting that first alcohol marker. अरे यार तुमने ये देखा ये क्या चीज है, और understanding it, dude, have you seen this thing? I don't know what it's called, but they you sketch on it and it sketches on the screen. That comes
Yeah.
those discoveries who are
Hmm.
very naive, and I think that is what drove us. Just
Hmm.
this pioneering feeling कि हम लोग कुछ ऐसा कर रहे हैं जो पता ही नहीं है
Yeah.
क्या हो रहा है।
Actually, when you're talking about all this, like I kept on thinking, and that makes a lot of sense because today students are very distracted, and that meditative time. I think it's a very beautifully said term, I guess. That meditative, you need that personal meditative time because design, you know, it has to be honest. uh, मतलब आई गिव यू एन एग्जांपल। अभी क्या होता है ना कि अगर बिहांस पे कोई किसी का अगर प्रोफाइल या पोर्टफोलियो बहुत पॉपुलर हो जाता है, लाइक इफ इट गेट्स लाइक immense number of views and all, then na you will immediately see from the next day onward itself, no, बहुत सारे similar style के portfolios दिखने लग जाते हैं। So everybody starts copying each other's styles because like whatever is trending, and उससे क्या होता है ना कि एक बहुत ज्यादा एंजाइटी भी बढ़ जाती है। Like people who are able to copy, they are happy, they'll get appreciated. People who are not able to copy, and they might be super talented, but just because they are not able to copy like that person, तो उसको फिर उतना वैल्यू नहीं मिलता। एंड आई हैव सीन लाइक मेनी फ्रस्ट्रेटेड स्टूडेंट्स लाइक दिस कि वो मतलब उनको इतना फ्रस्ट्रेशन हो जाता है, इतना वो एक कॉम्प्लेक्स आ जाता है कि वो कार डिजाइन इंडस्ट्री ही छोड़ देते हैं इवन दो दे आर पैशनेट एंड ऑल दैट। सो आई थिंक that is like even now the knowledge is available in abundance. One should be very careful to have that meditative time. One should be very sensitive about all these things, that they are just there for knowledge and they should not influence you, impact you in a way that you will be completely demotivated. But yeah, so that's why whatever you were saying, I can completely understand, I can resonate with you. uh, in between you said that you recently visited India, and I have seen that you had also visited NID. Now you finished your NID in 2007, and after so many years you got a chance to visit and interact with students from transportation design. So what were your like observations? Did you feel any kind of, like, you already said couple of things, but was there any sort of a prominent difference or worrisome kind of a thing that you felt कि अच्छा ये कुछ तो गड़बड़ हो रही है? Did you feel something like that?
देखो मैं काफी I try to be very reflective in ways, and I try to first take things the way they are and then regurgitate and take time to make an opinion. And so what I said to you right now is exactly what I felt about the situation right now, because and it's very difficult for me to judge. मैं एक ही दिन के लिए गया था और 2 दिन के लिए I
Hmm.
tried to meet students a couple of times to kind of
Hmm.
absorb how they are feeling, and also talk to the institute and talk to all the directors and stuff like that to understand. And this is what I felt. Uh, काफी लोगों का ये कहना होता है कि अ, अरे हमारे टाइम में तो कुछ नहीं था लेकिन हमने क्या क्या कर दिया, और कई
Hmm.
लोग हमारे पास सब कुछ है लेकिन हम फिर भी
नहीं
वी
कर
फील
पाए.
लाइक और समथिंग। वो वही चीज मुझे थोड़ी सी ऑड लगी, और उसके लिए आई थिंक स्टूडेंट्स, मुझे ऐसा फील हुआ कि दे नीड टू गेट कॉन्शियस ऑफ व्हाट दे आर स्टेपिंग इन।
Hmm.
they need to they have so much information about industry already before stepping into the industry। उनको पता है कि कैसे होता है। लोग क्वेश्चंस इतने इतने इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस और पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चंस पूछते हैं स्टूडेंट्स ऑलरेडी एट दैट एज, मैं उस टाइम पे आई डिडंट हैव I couldn't understand। They already know more or less how the industry works. What would I do that would lead to a certain outcome? What I really feel is that, and what I observed because of that is that inspiration from outside is to an extent inversely proportional to hunger,
Hmm. Okay.
right? So,
Let's, yeah. Let's take a moment to sink that in. But yeah. Yeah.
so for example, in our time, we had car design news, we had this a small window. So our hunger was intense because हमारे पास वो
Hmm.
था ही नहीं। And as you said, NID का मुझे पता था कि वो एक product design है जिसके through मैं car design करता था, तो the hunger to get into NID was intense,
Hmm.
and which is also like a bit too much because it's very tough. It's you put a lot of pressure on yourself. So definitely we need more inspiration than what we had.
Hmm.
But because we have social media today and we have opportunities to put whatever out there, whatever is out there, we need to consciously take a decision to detox or switch off ourselves and give ourselves that meditative time. And I think
Hmm.
that's what I felt students need to, because I saw that they had a lot of inspiration. I could see that they are instantly on social media, following so many accounts there. Everybody has an Instagram account. Everybody is trying to sketch. But when I try to look at their sketches, even for students in second year, I was like, okay, uh, the inspiration is heavier than your actual work.
Hmm.
What I'd be happier to see is that both should be equal, that you get inspired and you reproduce, or at least try to reproduce the same level of work.
Hmm.
And for that you need to balance the two things. In order to get your hunger, you will need to at times switch off and take a few things and then cordon yourself off, to put yourself in
Hmm.
a box and say कि नहीं, okay, मैंने ले लिया है ना, वो तो आता रहेगा हर सेकंड पे, there will
Hmm.
be stuff to come, but for the moment let me sit on this and then switch
Hmm.
off. Don't care what the world is doing or how fast they are moving ahead or doing what, but just nothing's gonna, we are not, the number of cars that a car company or a bike company designs in a year isn't drastically changing।
Hmm.
ऐसा नहीं है कि हम लोग 10 साल पहले साल में 3 प्रोजेक्ट्स पे काम कर रही थी कार कंपनी और आज की तारीख में 30 प्रोजेक्ट्स पे कर रही है, ऐसा नहीं है।
Hmm.
नंबर ऑफ कार्स हम लोग एक सर्टेन नंबर ऑफ डिजाइन दैट यू पुट आउट ऑन द रोड उतनी है, तो जो फाइनल आउटकम है उसमें इतना वेरिएशन नहीं है। तो हम लोग डिजाइन प्रोसेस को इतना ज्यादा टेंस और इतना ज्यादा रैपिड क्यों करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं?
Hmm.
कैन वी नॉट जस्ट कूल इट डाउन अ बिट?
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense for sure because even I have seen these kind of things, especially what you said, no, that inspiration is inversely proportional to your hunger. I think that perfectly makes sense because I have seen those examples. And, we are living in this time where our fingers are moving faster than our brain. So we are just scrolling down, but we are not taking that pause to think about things. So I think that's what you were trying to say, and I completely agree. So now that we have talked about all this. During your product design phase, during your 4 years at NID, one really wonderful thing happened, which we were just talking before this podcast, that you had won this Top Gear contest. And because of that, you got a chance to visit and attend Geneva Motor Show. So, so tell us more about that, because when you were living with so many challenges, that time it must have been something very effective, very huge. What was your experience? Tell us everything about that.
That was actually, yeah, an amazing time, not only at NID but for me personally as well. Um, we so because of a few people, a lot of other people kind of, that's what an institute does for you. तो आप अगर दो लोग हैं जो पुश कर रहे हैं बाउंड्रीज को, तो चार पांच लोग और हैं जिन्होंने सोचा नहीं था वो पुश करने लग जाते, तो वी हैड अ वेरी हेल्दी कॉम्पिटिटिव एनवायरनमेंट, हम लोग साथ में मॉडल्स बना रहे हैं, एंड एट दैट पॉइंट इंडिया के अंदर में भी डिजाइन का थोड़ा सा लाइक द मीडिया स्टार्टेड sort of doing. So we used to have this Siam competitions already, but magazines kind of coming out with a design competition was very rare. And Top Gear as a magazine was just coming into India, and as their first entry, again very important guy in my life, Gautam Singh, who was the editor of Top Gear at that point. Later on, became a very important figure for me. Um, so they launched this competition, and Nano wasn't released at that point.
Acha.
There was just a rumor that Tata is working on this one car, and the competition was to design a 1 lakh car for India.
Oh,
To
same nano brief basically.
basically, so design a 1 lakh car for India, and it was. And when I saw that brief, I realized that this is not just a. This is a very compared to other competitions where you were asked to make supercars or Ferraris or some
Hmm.
sort of. So this was a proper product design, automotive design thinking sort of competition. So it kind of really attracted me, and I actually was drawn to it. So I focused a lot on it, and I didn't know where to go. And what drew me more was the prize as well. And I remember in one of your podcasts you were mentioning earlier that हमने कभी I think it was Rohit or somebody who was mentioning कि हमने कभी Ferrari देखी ही नहीं, proportions देखे ही नहीं.
It was Rohit, yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right. So
Uh,
देखी ही नहीं, तो हमको कैसे, how do we know what it feels like,
exactly. Hmm.
So for me that was again another window, that Geneva Motor Show. If I win this contest, then I get to, go to and for the first time see like BMWs, Ferraris, and stuff like that. So I put in my heart out and used my learnings of product design actually in the competition. So not only think of just making a sketch and presenting it, but think of, let's say, how the ecosystem of factories would work. How can you lower the costs down? So I
Wow.
didn't know if you get a chance to look at it, but for example, I thought of ideas of how can you make a seat cheaper just with a frame, or how can you make a dashboard symmetric so that for different markets you can just move the module. Or
Wow.
I thought of why do we need a stereo in a car when you can have at that time I remember I had a Nokia 6110. It was 456 colors and a polyphonic ringtone, but one thing was you could store music and play MP3 through that or something like that. So like why can't
Hmm.
we just put a phone, go in the car, you just have tweeters instead of this. So I thought of a lot of things beyond just styling. Uh,
Hmm.
and then I thought of car with like lamps which could be flipped over, or mirrors that could be flipped over to reduce part cost, and how do you reduce the number of panels that you have on a car, compact size. So I did a lot of stuff apart from that, and eventually ended up winning the competition, and I think that kind of it gave me a sense of confidence in the way I was thinking. B, it was that it this was my first trip outside India solo in Europe for the first time as a student. No Google Maps, no nothing. and going to Geneva and then just enjoying that show, not eating for 3 days, just spending morning till night till till the door closes, in the show, and just blown away by whatever I saw there and amazing concepts, and that just spiraled my brain like, dude, we need to kind of this is real car design. This is where you want to be. This is what you want to achieve, sort of thing.
Wow. Even just listening to that story, I got goosebumps. Because when you are trying so hard, and I can I cannot even imagine like how you must have felt back then. कि जिनेवा में जाके you are seeing witnessing all that, क्योंकि वहां पे जो कार्स मिलती है आज की डेट में भी इंडिया में बहुत कम एक्सपोजर है उन कार्स का, that level of thing. Also, I loved what you said for that 1 lakh car brief, no? Uh, this is a commonly mistaken thing about car designing, I feel. Again, my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I feel is that design, has a balance of art and engineering. And most of the time, what happens is that that styling part of it, no, it takes away all the efforts which have gone into the functional aspect of it. So, for example, what you said to cut the cost down, you thought of symmetric dashboard design so that mass production cost can be cut down. You also thought because there is uh, right side driving, left side driving, and all that. Then also you thought of using that Nokia phone for music system again. So you are not just thinking about providing that beautiful looking sculpture on the road, but you are also thinking about all those practical constraints which I think most of the time, including me, okay, even I have fallen for this many a times. It happens that that artistic mindset, no, it takes over that design process so much that we completely forget कि अरे design करना है, मतलब it's not just styling exercise. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful thing what you did, and I think that's what they must have appreciated. Like during that time, did you get to meet some prominent figures from design industry and all?
While I was studying, I couldn't. But once I won this competition, is when then things again exponentially kind of moved in that direction, because I first of all I got in touch with Gautam Singh, who was the editor, and he was actually bringing in a lot of Italian designers like Ercole Spada and Marcello Cantini and
Oh,
stuff like them to India to have talks and maybe do some business and stuff. So uh, he invited me a couple of times. He was very gracious to always
wow.
so I didn't even know Marcello Cantini when I met him. I didn't know who he is. And when I was just invited, I went to listen to him, and later on I searched for him. I was like, oh, okay, all right. I was really so him, and then after that, because of that competition, uh, I would say because of that competition, I got an opportunity to do my summer training with Renault, because they saw that in the magazine, and
Hmm.
they kind of visited NID searching for to try out. They were trying to set up a studio in India. They wanted to explore the talent in India, and they kind of came to NID, reached out, and I was lucky to be there. So I was the first one who did summer training with them in India. At that point, sitting in DC, because they were doing some work with DC and they had no office as such.
अच्छा.
My mentor boss, Renault designer at that point, was sitting there overlooking the project over there. So he said like, you come to Pune and you sit inside DC, and we'll do something over there. So I mean, from there on is when I started meeting prominent people. So we would have Patrick Leshapi visit, Patrick Leshapi, and then Patrick Lecamont, the famous Renault director who kind of set up the Renault design process, so to say. So as a young guy, I kind of was exposed to those guys at that point. But before that, I don't remember meeting somebody very prominent from the car industry or design. Of course, we had alumni and stuff, but not somebody. Even Pratap Bose, for that matter. I met him later. Ajay Jain.
Acha,
Yeah. So all those happened after this competition. You know.
acha. Now that you talked about Renault, so I believe that was your final year internship project, right? Graduation project.
Yes, I did my summer training as well as then after summer training, I requested them if they were interested to do a diploma project, and they were. So I also did my diploma project with them.
Okay, awesome. And we can say that that was your, start of the professional career because you were dealing with people from the industry, you were working with them, and you were also working on that professional environment. How was your experience? Like were there any prominent sort of events or memories which, shaped your professional future?
You would laugh at the things that when you say prominent come to my head. Uh,
You can talk about it.
One of the most prominent things. So when I went for my graduation project
Huh?
is when the first time I or the second time because in my summer training I was doing interiors because my boss was an interior designer at that point.
Acha,
Two
okay.
months, 2 months I was learning to sketch. So that was the first time in summer training that I saw chart pack markers and I saw
Markers.
this tablet and I asked. So this is the prominent thing I remember in my summer training is um, we had a PQ guy who was actually originally a clay modeler who was kind of overlooking the project in DC
Hmm.
called Anna Leri. He was Italian, Renault guy. And he was visiting Japan at Nissan to kind of liaison, do some work or something.
Acha.
And I had first time seen this tablet with my boss. So I realized this company called Wacom. I was like, hey, this is cool. And I asked him if he could bring me a tablet from Japan. I
Japan.
still have it. So that was a prominent thing. That's the first time I actually worked with tools which are completely normal today.
Hmm.
And when I went for my graduation project, that is the first time I remember exterior wise. That was my first lessons, formal lessons in a way of how car design happens. So one of the most prominent things I learned initially was to flip my paper.
Okay.
So Ajay Jain was my mentor at that point, and it was brilliant.
Acha.
He was an amazing, amazing mentor, and he taught me a lot. And that's the first thing he kind of taught me is a Nirmit. Flip your paper, draw on the other side, mirror your sketches, and that kind of stayed with me forever, even till date. I just don't do a sketch
Wow.
and that's it. I still, just to be sure, even I have to flip, sketch it over again, and that's when I know that okay, my sketch is going to look ambivalent. It's going to look okay to others, not just me, because you're always a bit biased towards whichever is your dominant side. So, so those were quite prominent in all the experiences I had of just spending time with uh, actual car designers and working in an actual environment. And Renault, in my opinion, is the best school uh, if you're a car designer because their process was so design focused and their way of approaching design was so philosophical and so nice that
Hmm.
really kind of and they gave you time. They respected the time. They respected mm, the time you need to do design. So
That meditative
that
meditative time probably.
yes, and I experienced that think of a story and how do you build something to kind of express that
Hmm.
story. That whole process of the beautiful process of design Of course, in today's times, you have so many deadlines and stuff, and you have to really push. And sometimes the boss just comes to you and says like, "Oh, it's a sketch, please, just sketch." You don't get that time to kind of create your story, find your inspiration, and then translate that into something tangible. So
Mm.
I think those were the prominent things, starting blocks that I really learned um, during my
Yeah.
diploma project. And
I think more I'm talking and listening to you, no, I'm realizing like how important is that meditative time for design process, and how that time is going down and down with all these modern technologies, and this fast moving development processes. I keep hearing about startups making designs in like 1 month and all, like from start like sketching to the proportion model prototype.
Mhm.
Like I have heard stories where startups have achieved all of this in 1 month. Like last week only we were discussing, and I was like, how did he, that means that the designer has spent only like 3 4 days on sketch, then somebody has come and done the 3D model, and probably the milling started right away,
Mhm.
and that's how they were managed to get that proportion model in place. But yeah, there's absolutely no time to think about or validate, or that especially during design, we have learnt about that customer feedback, that market research, user research, the sensitivity towards form, the reason why we do clay and things like that. But now I feel, because of this fast moving process, and especially because of this social media also, I think everybody wants like quick results, कि इसलिए विस्कॉम सब लोग यूज करने लगे हैं अभी, कि मैं 4 लाइन मारूंगा और मुझे रेंडर मिल जाएगा अंदर. But yeah, I think that one prominent thing I am able to realize and understand is that meditative time. I think it's very important for a designer to include and have that in your design process. Wow. So that was your Renault experience. And in between, you also talked about, you know, uh, people like Pratap Bose, Ajay Jain, and they have become like very prominent figures in car industry, especially this is Indian design industry. Uh, so after Renault, now you joined Tata, right? That was your first proper designer job, right?
Yeah.
So how did that happen, and what was your experience like?
It was amazing. It was amazing. Again, because I think we were at a time where design was just coming in. So you had, design. I mean, design always existed, but the next level, so to say. So like in every company in my initial years, um, you go in and you are overwhelmed. So
Hmm.
I was hired in Tata by Pratap and Pierre Castaner, who was head of design at that point.
Oh,
Uh,
they were there that time. Acha.
yeah, yeah. Pratap and Pierre Castaner, who was an ex Renault guy who was heading design at that point. Really nice guys, and again, my work kind of helped me to for them to see and appreciate that. No, I mean, there are people who are kind of pushing, I think, a little bit in terms of not just sticking to very constrained design, but actually trying to express a little bit freely.
Okay.
Um, but when I entered Tata, I the first day I remember I went in and I had this whole wall filled up with sketches from Flavia Dache and Sandeep Bhambra. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, and
okay.
they had also
Again, prominent figures.
prominent figures, and they had also it wasn't like they'd been there. That was their, I think, their first professional engagements too. Maybe I think a year earlier than me, but of course they had done their education from Strad and from RCA and stuff like that. But the quality of sketching that I saw, I just felt like taking a U-turn and going back home. Uh, you know, so I was insanely overwhelmed, and I was very young because I didn't do postgrad and I straight away went into job. So
Hmm.
I was very young. I felt very tiny, Um, but they were amazingly helpful guys. They were really helpful, and they kind of saw that hunger that I had, and like really encouraged me, and showed me some of their traits now. You know what I had learned, and they showed me that. And then I think it became my challenge to come to their level. So I not only were they helping me, but I was also looking at them as like, hey,
Hmm.
that's my goal. That's my next level. So I started coming and like just switch like tunnel vision, just went berserk on every project. I mean, even though our projects were fairly conservative, we had really conservative projects at that time in Tata. It wasn't the Tata that you see today.
Hmm.
It was the building blocks to what Pratap has done over 10 years, and then now, it's being carried forward in a nice way. But it was really the initial time where, even a small grill change um, had to be sanctioned off by Ratan Tata himself, or, some
Oh,
tops.
is it?
Yeah,
Wow.
so it was a very sort of rigid place. There was a UK studio had a very small footprint, like a small house with like three or four designers in it, and we were mainly dependent on consultancies outside and doing facelifts and stuff. And but this was the time when we started actually trying to build our own design and cars, and the guys I mentioned were the first proponents of, and maybe you can count me in a little bit way. And we were like the first batch to kind of start really doing in-house sort of full full scale sort of designing in a way. And that was an amazing experience. And the other amazing part was that because you're young and because you're in, I did everything. I did everything. I did interiors, I did exteriors, I did trucks, I did in terms of sketching and making proposals, cars, SUVs, you name it. I did the whole plethora of everything. So it was first job. It was very enjoyable. The environment was amazing. People were great, and I had a lot of people to look up to. That's what matters to me the most. Wherever I go, I need some people whom I can like. Okay,
Yeah.
that's where I want to be. You know.
Yeah.
I would say it was a very good experience. First job, I think it was a very good experience.
I think like I realize it now, but in a designer's journey, I feel mentors play a huge role. Like if you have a good mentor, he can save a lot of troubles for the future. And the way I'm listening, like the more I'm listening to your stories, I can say that you have got like really good mentors at the early stage of your career itself, like Ajay Jain, Pratap Bose, and just learning from them, Sandeep Bhambra also. And when I was shooting podcast with Swaroop Roy, and that time also he was telling me about similar things that Sandeep used to guide him. He used to teach him like sketching and all the nuances of car designing and how it has shaped like all his future career and everything. So I think like you are one of the great validation that how mentors can play a huge role in a designer's journey. Now, after your Tata experience, then you went into exploring different experiences. So, for example, you worked at Honda in Tokyo, Japan. After Honda, you went to Renault to Opel, and then after that, uh, you are now in Sweden. So these all these places are and those countries especially, they have a very unique sort of known culture. How was that experience, and why did you like? Was that a very conscious decision that you wanted to get some experience abroad? That's why you moved to Honda. What was your thought process?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and lately I've been reflecting on the journey as well myself. Um, and it's quite funny. It takes me back to my diploma project that I did. Um, I don't know if you had a chance, but if you do, you can kind of look into it. And I always had fascination for cultures. Um, seasons, and uh, had a very exploratory or a curious attitude towards that. So for me, I think it was sort of subconscious, but it kind of aligned with whenever I hit a ceiling in terms of my skills and stuff. I wanted to always challenge. I didn't want to get comfortable.
Hmm.
So as I told you in Tata, I entered in and I had like these guys to look up to, and then in couple of years I kind of tried to almost got to a point where I was competing with them, and we were like a little bit like that. And then I wanted to push myself further and see, okay, I always questioned, like, people outside have two hands, two eyes, one brain, two ears, one mouth. How does it? How is it? How can I not be um, at the same level, or how can I test myself, like whether I can do that or not? And as it happened, I started looking out, and with the hunger to push myself to the next level. And I started looking out, and again, as luck may have it, I ended up getting an opportunity at Honda in Japan, which was like I'm not sure, but I think they had never hired an Indian before, or had sort of this thing, and it was Advanced Design Tokyo. Again, I had no idea about Tokyo. I always imagined Tokyo to be geographically much higher than us, only to realize that actually no, Tokyo is almost pretty much in line with the top of India, and so both these things, this curiosity for cultures and also the hunger to kind of push myself higher, um, sort of took me there. Um, and then, of course, there were some other factors, life, getting on, getting married, having a kid, and other factors kind of coming into play. But somehow, subconsciously, if you see my diploma project, in my research part of my diploma project, you will see that I have done a research on cultures and how they affect car design.
Wow. Okay.
So whatever information I could get from internet, articles from car design news, I had put in my research. Uh, that what was interesting to me was that how does culture affect car design, and how do you learn to absorb that and reproduce,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
Um, and my first project at Renault, the diploma project, was also that. It was titled My First Renault.
Acha.
What they, and again, that's why I said Renault is a great school when you want to learn, because what they said is that you are an Indian, and if you were to make a Renault for yourself in India, if you imagine that you graduate from a school and you get to a point where you want to buy a car, what would that be?
Hmm.
So my project brief was set instantly. Then I was like, okay, if Renault were to come to India, if in India, and if I were to take my culture and fuse it into what Renault stands for, or French culture, and try to do something that is not very literal, like taking a fish and trying to design a car that looks like a fish.
Hmm.
That's what a lot of, sometimes in the student time you have this kind of like innocence where you think that, oh, that's going to be great, but to kind of get maturity into that concept. So those kind of things I think have subconsciously driven me through my journeys. And whenever I felt comfortable at one place where I feel like, okay, things are kind of settling in, I understand it, I almost feel a bit like no, I need to push myself in another sort of realm to kind of get a global understanding of design, and to be able to make your mind
Hmm.
switch and understand nuances. um, so I think subconsciously and through some other factors of whatever opportunities I got, I believe this has defined my journey overall, and my curiosity to understand different cultures in a way.
Okay. Now, like you have worked in an Indian work culture, Japanese work culture, Renault, obviously French work culture, Opel, German work culture, and Swedish work culture. So I think you are definitely, I think you are definitely the designer I have ever met with the maximum amount of cultural diversity of experiences. So that's pretty amazing. And I think, as you are saying, that whatever you're talking about, your personal liking towards culture and all that, I think no wonder that you were able to manage cracking all those interviews and getting all that, those work experiences. But I'm very curious to understand, because uh, very few of us would have exposure to different work cultures. So if you have to sum up work cultures in one or two sentences of these individual countries, what are those most distinguishing, unique characteristics of these countries? Can you summarize that?
Sure. I can just say one. Let's put one syllable to each
Yeah,
culture.
let's say
Yeah.
that. Yeah, let's do that.
Japan is discipline.
Which one? Japanese.
Japan is discipline.
All right.
Discipline
Okay.
is priority. Whatever you do it with utmost discipline and dedication, and do it, and you believe and you go through with it. You go till the end, and you you don't have any loose ends, so to say. So
Okay.
it's all about discipline. Their approach is very discipline oriented. Uh, when you come to Renault, or French culture, or Renault, you can say the same thing about Porsche and Renault. It's a very forgiving, and yet very exploratory, creative, because their philosophy is why not?
Wow.
Why
Okay.
not? If I have to say one word about French culture, is like why not? You know, they
Wow.
always look at things like that. So okay, can you do this? Can you bend this into a 90-degree? Why not?
Why not?
So there is a very exploratory nature and loving stories, and romantic sort of approach towards that, and they are ready to fall. They are ready to make mistakes. They can laugh at themselves. So they have that sort of approach, which is quite amazing as a designer. Yeah,
Beautiful. Okay.
yeah. Germany is all about doing things right. There is a way which is based on thorough research, thorough sort of understanding, and their thought is very evolutionary. So it's all about doing things right. They believe in the process, and if you do things a way that has been set up, and you do incrementally keep improving the process, you will end up with inherently a good product.
Hmm.
They do not make compromises. That's their approach. There is no way you compromise in there. You have to go the right way. So, for
Okay.
example, how I differentiate between the two cultures is, I give this analogy, is that if you're walking on a path, right, and you have a huge playground next to you, right, and you see the path goes straight and goes to a right angle on the corner. If you want to reach, to the other corner, a German would be kind of walking, and he would know this is the path, so he would go straight and go 90 degrees, because that's the path.
Okay.
That's
Hmm.
set in stone. That's what you do. That's what you follow, and you'll be there in a good condition, in a good way. When
Hmm.
I see a French culture, they would be like standing there. They would question themselves, "Hey, I need to go there. Why do I need to take this long path?" It's like, can I not just cut through the ground? And then somebody
Yeah.
would say, like, "Yeah, but there might be like thorns on the way," and somebody's like, "Yeah, but why not?"
Why not?
Like, okay, let me see. Let me see.
Yeah.
It is. So that's, I think, their culture.
Okay.
And I think Swedish culture, though mostly Germanic, but it has this sense of French. And I think Swedish culture is very sensitive. So I think what's
Hmm.
most important in Swedish culture is uh, safety and logic.
Okay.
So they want to hit the right path. They want to go the right path,
Hmm.
but they also want to look around. They also want to draw inspiration and use logic. Like, okay, why not? Okay, but if we do it this way, how can we make sure that it is good? How can we
Hmm.
make sure that we don't fall? Yes, we want to go this path. We can take this path, but let's build a path first here as well. So
Hmm.
they will cut through, but they will cut in a very logical and a systematic. manner and try to reduce the number of falls they can have. So
Wow.
it's a very sensitive culture. Again, there is a little bit of meditativeness between Swedish culture and Japanese culture. That I find them fairly close. Maybe it has to do with how geographically they are located and how isolated they are in a way. But that's what I feel in Swedish
Wow.
culture.
And what about Indian culture?
That's the most amazing thing is because yeah, we believe in. I mean, you've heard the term jugaad, right? Right.
True, true.
So we are still forming. I would say our culture is changing drastically right now. So it's very difficult to have a snapshot of it and say
Hmm.
the most literal thing people would say is that oh we are chaotic. Yeah,
Yeah.
chaos, thriving in chaos, sort of thing. But I don't think that's only the top surface. I think beyond
Hmm.
that, I think what we are, I think on the cusp of discovering is the fact that our culture is inherently sensitive. It's very sensitive to details, to minute things.
Hmm.
Um, the moment I think at the moment what we are is that we are really zoomed in. I think we're developing the sensitivity to look at things from a bigger perspective, and that's what you
Hmm.
see in design happening. So we are at that point where we are kind of aping the West or already developed cultures in terms of design, but we're
Hmm.
slowly now starting to transition and find our own voice
Hmm.
in a way. And as India is, it is going to be exciting, I feel.
Hmm.
We have a very strong out of the box thinking attitude. Um, and aesthetically, I think we are kind of developing maturity looking at the West. But in terms of
Hmm.
thinking, in terms of finding solutions, I think we have a really that's the mathematical brain that we have that
Hmm.
does calculations and figures out ways to solve problems in very innovative way. Take Chandrayaan 3 for that matter. You know,
Yeah.
I think that's very frugality, efficiency, and yet reliability.
Hmm.
I think it's a very tough
Yeah.
set of values, but I think that's what our culture is kind of going towards, and I think
Hmm.
I'm looking
Yeah.
at it very positively.
I think, yeah, as in, I never thought in this line, but yeah, Chandrayaan is probably the best example of what Indian attitude is. And I think that attitude will eventually be captured in design processes as well.
Yeah.
And as you said, I think, I also think that we are in that formative years where we are also learning from everyone and trying to figure out what can be that unique thing for us.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think it was a very beautiful like summary of all the work cultures, and in just like these 5 minutes, one can get an idea like which culture will be the best suitable culture for that person. Awesome. So now that you were just talking about culture in Sweden, like which is about little like German, but they also have their own sensitivity and the way of doing things. So let's quickly dive into your experience at Volvo. Tell us more about that. Like, how's your experience? How's the culture?
It's brilliant. Uh, it's brilliant. I've really enjoyed being here. Um, both aspects, from the way you think, the thinking design. It's a thinking design company, so everything has to have a reason. Everything has to have a logic,
Hmm.
and yet we want to make products that connect with people. That's the most important for Volvo. It's not just
Hmm.
something that excites you, I think that's what Volvo's. There was a survey recently. I don't know the authenticity of it, and I was listening. I was hearing some recently. Volvo is, I think, one of the least hated brands in the world. Let's put it this way, and longevity, and that tells you
Hmm.
that people connect with it a lot. So my experience learning over here is great. And if you talk about my personal sensibilities after having those experiences, I find them connecting quite well with them because it has this. the 1 lakh car thing, not just looking at design, but also thinking
Hmm.
of the ecosystem, also thinking of sustainability, also thinking of the people, how they're going to use it, and what is the requirement, and yet creating something that's endearing and beautiful to look at. Um, and that is quite synonymous with the culture, human aspect as well. It is quite
Hmm.
thoughtful. It is quite appreciative and sensitive of other cultures, and the studio environment is also very nice and similar. And there's a very good sense of family and um, helping each other um, out at.
Hmm.
And this is something I've really appreciated here, and something new for me to learn, because as you know, as you mentioned earlier, um, it's a very competitive environment, and different car companies, things can get so toxic or heated, and
Hmm.
you really need to have a super thick skin to be able to navigate those things. So in that sense, coming to a place where everybody has your back in a way, and you kind of help each other out, and you figure out a way to kind of uh, compete in a very healthy way and have a very common goal as to what you can achieve, is a very refreshing thing.
Many of us want to understand the story behind tugboats. What is it? How did it start? Why did it start? Tell us everything about that.
um, I think this is when I was at Opel, um, just before COVID hit. Um,
Okay.
and I mean, if you spend decent amount of time in one car company, you would realize, or any automotive scenario, you would realize that a company always goes through ups and downs. There are highs and lows. And Opel was just sold to Stellantis, and we were going through a lot of you know um, structural changes within the company and working. And quite often, what happens during this time is that the work kind of goes to a low level, and as a designer, you have to have this kind of waiting ability or patience to sit low for a while, do nothing basically, and wait for things to kind of get moving and
Hmm.
stuff. So for me personally, that was getting very. I was feeling like you know, uh, क्या क्या करूं, or how do I? So when you have this kind of lull or empty time, I was constantly thinking, and for a very long time, I had in the back of my head. I've always had, even through my NID days, I've always imagined or manifested in a way to have a space of my own. This meditative space that I keep talking about, something where I can reflect on my learnings and bring things together in a way. So it really started like that, and I sort of felt like I've spent that many years in the industry at different places, and what all have I gathered from that? And if I were to take my own sweet time and try to at least, because what happens in also in car industry, it's not always that you get one full project, or you're doing many
Hmm.
multiple things. You're doing snapshots of the whole process. At some places
True.
you might be participating in sketch blitzes and doing a lot of creative work. At one point you'd be doing the tough part of kind of translating that into 3D. At one point you'd be doing maybe the execution part where you're fighting with engineers to get it through different milestones and gates and stuff. So वो complete process जहाँ पे आप आज की तारीख में, it is quite difficult because the process has evolved so much and everything. So I was
Hmm.
somewhere feeling that hunger to kind of at least see one thing completely through and see what my skills collectively can kind of give. And like I always have, I always do things 100%. I mean, I have when somebody asks me, how good are you at multitasking? I said, not at all. I'm good at doing multiple tasks one after the other rather than doing multiple tasks at one time. So, so I was like, okay, if I do it, I do it full send, do it in a full way. And then the time was such, so I kind of did my own calculation. I said, okay, let me jump into this, explore this thing. Being a very analog guy, there were new technologies like visualization that I was getting kind of getting to know the importance of that, and getting my control over doing great data and doing it to the last limit. And I saw a lot of people doing uh, projects, but they leave it at one point. They don't go all the way to the last millimeter, almost like spending the same amount of
Hmm.
energy that you would spend in a production car or a production project. So I just thought that I want to do that, and uh, uh, that was the starting point, and I kind of took the leap of faith and I jumped in, and there were a couple of projects in my head that I had, and I wanted to do that. And so I spent like a year and a half trying to do that and create this brand and do everything, some things that I don't get to do in a car company, and kind of build my own process and philosophy of how I would like to do the design.
Wow. Okay.
Come up with this motto like, hey, whatever I want to do, I want three things. I want to design future with purpose. I want to do it with precision because that's my personal taste. Like I want to do things very precisely, and at the end, I still want them to have punch. I
Hmm.
want them to have excitement. Yet at the same time, I always had um, this feeling that I was always attracted to things that were that make you think that is it real? You know, as opposed to doing something completely fantasy, like that isn't real.
Hmm.
So that is my taste. I want to do things. I wanted to do things that people look at it and go like, "Is that real, or is that?"
Hmm.
So those were the two things kind of drove me to do those projects, with so doing complete package studies myself and working on ergonomics, working on different, doing every single detail. You know, thinking of those things. So that's basically the seed of kind of tugboats that started. So did the name as well. The idea of being like a tugboat as opposed to a big cruise liner, which you are in a car company.
Hmm.
That small, tiny little thing that kind of helps you navigate and comes into the port. Come into the port, you know, with a small team, but doing something that you could do, a big company could do for that matter. So yeah, I mean that was the starting point, and also was a way to not only just put out sketches but put out a complete process
Hmm.
to the outside
Yeah.
world. So learning Instagram through this, learning VRED through this. So I learned a lot of things through this, like, and but I wanted to make sure that whatever I put out, it's not just another sketch,
Hmm.
just another 3D model quickly done, or something. I wanted for people to kind of stop and think like, is this Toyota, or is this what is this? Like, is this a real project, or what is it?
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean that was a consultancy, so to get projects through that and to start, you know, getting quality work
Yeah.
through that.
Actually, yeah. As in, when you were saying that, I was just wondering that there are very few complete projects from professional designers which are available in public domain. Matlab, with this so much of confidentiality and things like that, and also time, I guess most of the time you will spend in the company, 9 to 8 job, so you hardly get time to work that extensively to make that complete project. And yeah, I think that's where I think tugboats stands out a lot, because it's not just a fancy render or a fancy sketch, it's a complete process. And I completely loved what you said about purpose, precision, and punch, right? So that's a beautiful philosophical way of combining or complete design process. So I loved it. So just curious, is it still active? As in
Yeah,
that consultancy, what you mentioned?
yeah, it is still active, except the fact that whenever I'm working with a car company, I'm not doing projects that conflict with that. So I'm
Ah,
the
understood.
same philosophy. So Tugboats was also a way. It started with that, but I always imagined it as a platform for myself where I could explore other realms of design.
Hmm.
So it wasn't just limited to cars. In my past as a freelancer, I've designed graphics and bottles for Kingfisher, or I've done interiors of homes and stuff like that. Areas where I would not, as a car designer, I don't get a chance to go. are
Hmm.
realms that I also want to explore through TUGBOTZ, product design for that matter, or doing branding and stuff like that. So when I'm working for a car company, I'm not actively doing car design, but I'm doing other
Hmm.
stuff, even furniture or stuff like that. So
Wow.
it's an area which also helps me um, to explore other realms and kind of draw inspiration from that back into car design. So it's a very sort of interesting exchange platform in a way for me personally.
Wow. So I have listed down several student, like frequently asked questions by students. So I'll just ask one by one. So those students will be also getting answers from the experienced designer like you. So the first very frequently asked question is like, what are the essential things required for a great car designer? Now this is mostly coming from aspiring designers, like who are, let's say, trying to become a car designer, or someone who is already in the design industry, not in the design industry, design college, and they are still curious or probably figuring out like what is car design, what are those essential things required to become a good car designer. So what is your opinion on that?
It's a tough question these days, particularly because car design is changing quite drastically right now. I mean, we are going towards mobility, and a lot of companies are exploring mobility per se. So they are kind of going away from that term car design in a way,
Mm-hmm.
sort of straight up car design. Unless you go for super exotic marks and people who are outrightly. But what I'd say is that the the biggest key for any sort of design is observation, in my opinion.
Mm.
In today's times, it's even more because we are getting more and more user centric. And I'm also saying this from a perspective of being at Volvo because that's how we are. We are very user centric. So, so I think that's one of the key important things, to be very observant and at the same time work on your skills. So sketching and of course doing that is important, but also start to understand how the new tools and technology and different things that are at your disposal, how to use them, how to use them to express yourself, A, and B, um, wrap it around a user.
Mm.
How do you wrap your expression around a user, and how do you make it connect to a user? So you want to sing a song, but you want the audience to kind of connect with it, right? That's how
Mm.
that's how car design is, and for that, two things are important. One is riyaz, and being sensitive to who you're making it for. Um,
Mm.
so riyaz is the skill part. So that whether you're going to use AI or you're going to use your hand or you're going to use whatever tools you use, I think the final stage is not just making a 2D drawing. It is to kind of translate it into something actual on the road. Yeah.
Mm.
If you understand this part, uh, make sure that all the tools become subsidiary to that, and they help you to kind of achieve. The key is that process, that link of
Mm.
yourself, consumer, the problem case, and then your expression.
Wow, awesome. This is becoming a design masterclass. Uh,
I guess I don't know.
no, no, no. I think it makes a lot of sense. So the next question is, now that you already spoke about tools, and this is a very trending sort of a topic in recent times, artificial intelligence. It has been there for a long time. You know, Google has been doing this for almost more than a decade now. But in recent 1 year, I guess, last 1 year, there have been so many AI tools, and most of them are around visualizations. So with the tools like Midjourney, you can quickly get like really good generative AI outputs. Now Photoshop also has that generative AI tool where you can quickly create scenarios and things like that. So many a times I'm getting this question that is AI gonna replace a car designer's job.
uh, I think I might not have much more insight on it than you do, but I'm looking at a few things which I already touched upon earlier. One of the one of them is that the final AI at the moment is active only till a certain aspect of design, which is the creative part.
Hmm.
But that's only a small part of design. The bigger part is translation that into 3D.
Hmm.
An even bigger part than that is conversion of that into something tangible on the road.
Hmm.
And then the fourth part is whether it connects to the consumer and it sells or is it successful or not. So
Hmm.
when I, so when I look at the final frontier, the number of independent car designs that a car company is putting out on the road, there is not a massive difference than earlier. You know, the lineup of cars
Right.
is changing, right?
Hmm.
What's happening is these tools are like fast food. You know, they're like McDonald's fries, instant carbohydrates. So you're getting instant. Uh, what I'm struggling to see with those tools is that there are two things at the moment that I see. I have myself dealt with it as well. And as a very analog designer and a designer who really values uh, sketching and original
Instincts.
idea, it's very difficult for me to kind of digest. But if I keep that bias aside for a second, um, there are two things that I'm kind of seeing missing there. Is that one is character. So you get an amalgamation or a average funneling of all the ideas out there in AI and kind of getting some very excited, fresh fried potatoes, you know,
Hmm.
on there, which instantly like give you like a rush, and you're like, oh, this is kind of finished and nice. But when you actually kind of look at the character, because it's an amalgamation, it doesn't have a bias.
Hmm.
The AI at the moment doesn't discriminate. It just takes whatever it has and puts it together. What a
Correct.
human mind does it discriminates.
Hmm.
That's why when you have five designers in a studio, you have five different characters that you can kind of come out, and that's what gives you variety. And at the end of the day, it's the character that connects with the customer.
Hmm.
You know, you may have polarizing opinions. You may like something or may not. You know, that
Yeah.
is character, right? Otherwise, you're just making vanilla. You're making
Hmm.
everything that more or less looks the same, and you remove the badge and
Yeah.
kind of do that. And the other thing I face is that the thing that takes maximum time in a design process is not the designing itself, is the decision making,
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
while we are having a lot of AI for creating more design and more kind of options, I think in essence, unless we have a leadership which is able to cut the clutter
Hmm.
and have a vision, all it is doing it is confusing us.
Yeah.
Confusing us.
True.
It is a very, my opinion might be very polarized right now. I mean, there might be people who would say like,
No, but I completely agree with this because all these tools are just providing options, and finally which one to pick, and that conscious thinking that okay, this is addressing to that user's need, that particular, whatever you were saying before, that to understand the user, like Volvo, that philosophy, what you're saying, that it's all user centric. So I think that little human sensitivity is required to all that, and decision making is going to be a huge part of it. And we can always give prompts to these AI tools, but I think what I, as in my personal opinion on this, no, is that like whenever new technology like this comes, no, there's always these kind of rumors that okay, they are going to steal our job, they are going to steal our jobs. Like for example, I remember when we just entered NID, so during that time Photoshop was just entering into design process. And people who have spent like a lot of time on honing up their marker skills and all, they were kind of getting skeptical about this Photoshop. And for them, like I have had interactions with several of my seniors where they said don't use Photoshop at all. And then there was a time where people were started saying that Photoshop ही सब कर ले रहा है, designers की कोई जरूरत ही नहीं रहेगी. And then after, like when I look back to all those things, I feel these technological things are just tools to make your life easier and more convenient, I believe. And but finally that decision making, all those human things, intuitive things,
Absolutely.
that what, and including that meditative time, to
Yeah.
figure out and provide that character onto something which is emotional.
Yeah.
When we talk about automotive design, emotions are something which we can't ignore. And I think for that you need to have that human touch, and for that you need to have that designer capabilities, I guess. But yeah, so whatever you were saying, I think I completely agree with it, with that. So
No,
okay.
but just to add to it, it doesn't mean that I think it's a tool that we are still learning, and we will still take a little bit of time to understand how it is going to be like Photoshop, and how do we integrate it effectively into the design
Hmm.
process. I mean, one thing I see for sure is that it's a very good tool as a mental block breaker.
Hmm.
As a human, you have mental blocks. As a designer, you have mental blocks. There are areas you don't want to venture in, you
Correct.
know. And this tool definitely helps you to kind of to at the moment what I've seen is to break that block and to help you kind of rewire your brain to think in a different way. But yet after that, kind of getting your brain to do that job and to think in that direction and come up with something tangible is again the onus is
Hmm.
on us. So no doubt. I mean, it's a new tool, and we are kind of exploring it right now, and it will have its place for sure. But decision making is still a very human thing. And why I say this is because still right now people are buying cars, and buying a car is still an emotional decision.
Correct. Yeah.
A human is making that decision whether I want that car or not.
Yeah.
So when the final outcome is this, the process will need to have human intervention. I feel, no matter what tool comes in the future, I feel that humans,
Yeah.
even when you give prompts, you will kind of try to direct it in your taste or your human direction.
Correct.
Uh,
Correct. Yeah.
anyways,
Yeah. It's quite valid what you're saying. Uh, the next question is that there are many students who are now in that final stage of their design education, where they are making portfolios and they are uh, very proactively approaching to companies and all. The biggest challenge they are facing is that they are not able to crack any, like, most of those opportunities, and their question is that how to stand out as a car designer in that highly competitive space.
well, you can always try. You can always try because it's hyper competitive.
Hmm.
Uh, and it really depends on you understanding what a certain company or a place that you want to be needs or requires,
Hmm.
right? If you can crack that, the chances of you cracking into that place are much higher because the company instantly sees results.
Hmm.
When a company is hiring you, imagine yourself in a hiree position, like you're going to be hiring somebody,
Hmm.
right? You're going to be giving money to that person. What do you want to get something out of that person, right?
Correct.
And you will only hire somebody where you instantly see the chances of that person being useful ASAP,
Hmm.
right? If you think from this perspective, as a student, all you need to do is just put yourself there and understand the company that you're kind of going for. There's a lot of work out there, and this is where I think we are in a good space because there's so much of information out there that if you want to
Hmm.
focus on getting somewhere, you can really research, understand the company even before entering it, and prepare yourself accordingly.
Hmm.
So as I said, different cultures. Um, if if you already know that let's say applying to a French car company, they have a taste for very quirky design, out of the box thinking, and they really appreciate skills, sketching skills or ideation. You know, build your portfolio directed towards that. Try to kind of hone yourself in that direction,
Hmm.
and then kind of try to apply and try and see. There might still be many competitors, but you kind of narrow down your you na- you already go to the next level of the pyramid where you reduce the competition. So all the people who are not hitting that zone will already be eliminated.
Hmm.
So you reduce your chances, and the more hunger you have towards getting somewhere, the more you need to push in that direction. So literally take whatever you see, absorb as much as you can see about that particular goal, and try to imbibe that, combine it with your sensibilities in present. And also, what companies
Hmm.
do like is that they, of course, everybody appreciates when somebody, when you know that somebody has made the effort to understand you, right? if I
Correct.
if I wanna understand you and make the effort of knowing about you or what you're doing, it instantly gives you a sense of feeling that no, this guy has made an effort. He really actually is not just trying to hit a stone on the stick on the wall sort of attitude. Is actually focused. It goes both ways,
Hmm.
right? So you do that and then you give it to your best shot, or even just ask for feedback and then keep honing yourself, keep molding yourself in that direction. Be sensitive, be
Correct.
flexible, but be focused. Um,
Hmm.
so, I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. It isn't easy to just crack. It has got combination of both your sensitivity and your skills and honing your skills.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, that's pretty powerful. Like every company has their own way of doing things, and like as you said, if somebody is like putting in the shoes of the hiring person over there, I think things are gonna get very clear. Like what are they expecting for, and you just have to put those things with best possible skills of yours, and then things will be better. Okay. Uh, Now, many of the students they feel stuck with their design skills. You know, so this is another commonly asked question. Like, okay, I don't know how to get ahead of this skill set I have.
mhm.
So, what will be your suggestion to them?
I mean, as I said during my journey, whenever you feel stuck, where you feel like you hit a ceiling, where you cannot,
Hmm.
then you need to find another source of challenge,
Hmm.
or and it could the challenge could come in multiple ways. It could be a new tool that you were very hesitant about. Like I was very
Hmm.
hesitant about 3D tools as a student. I
Hmm.
never touched them. I was very hesitant, and I ignored them for a long time. And I was trying to stay in my comfort zone. But when I do feel like no, I'm stuck, then I said, okay, no, I need to kind of put in the time and the effort to push myself through that tool, at least to come out with an answer. Maybe I start falling in love with it, or I come out with the answer like, no, this is not for me.
Hmm.
Either ways, I will move forward.
Correct.
Either way, I'll find answers. So I think whenever you are stuck in anywhere as a designer, I would say you need to kind of zoom out of yourself a little bit and see and observe all the factors around you which are resulting into you being stuck. Look at yourself from a
Hmm.
distance, try to be very objective about it, and be very critical of yourself. Like, why am I stuck? What am I doing? So when you zoom out, you're able to see what you're doing, and you're able to see your surroundings as well. You're saying, okay,
Hmm.
what is my surrounding? Am I in the right environment? Am I having the right challenges around me, or is my vision blurred or clouded? And if you come to a point where you feel like, no, my vision is blurred, then you kind of remove the clouds and try to see clearly, okay, what's there? What is the next challenge that I can give myself and get
Hmm.
out of this stuck position? So be it trying a new tool, meeting new people.
Hmm.
At some point, what happens is you are in an institute, you are surrounded by the same team, the same people for a long time. And when you don't get exposure outside, then you have to go looking for it. So
Correct.
whether it is trying to actually make the effort of going to another city and trying to meet, connecting with alumni over there, or trying to meet people in the industry if they are not coming to your college. So,
Hmm.
for example, I mean, my when I was stuck or didn't know what to do, my kind of catalyst came from the fact how Rugved took me to NID and showed me the institute.
Hmm.
That got me like flying, like, oh, this is what I want. This is my challenge.
Correct.
When I was at Tata, after a while, when I reached this thing, I looked outside. I said, okay, what's the next challenge? I think I'm doing very conservative projects here, and I looked at this Honda Advanced Design opening, and I was like, okay, what? I read through it, and it seemed like something that was completely different than what I was doing at Tata. It was the polar opposite. And I was like, can I put myself in that soup?
Hmm.
Can I try? And you do your you have a fake, not fake, but you have a faint imagination of whatever you think advanced design might be, and you try to
Hmm.
actually give it a shot. You put it in your portfolio, you send it out, and if it hits, if it clicks, then you get a chance to get into that environment. And when you get in that
Correct.
environment, that's the next challenge for you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been the opposite for me. I've tried to not get stuck at one place. I've tried to always push myself
Hmm.
away.
Wow. That's a brilliant way of, keep growing as a designer. Now that we have talked about so many things from your journey, your professional things, we have also answered student question. Now let's come to the final question. Uh, you have actually shared, like you have literally poured your heart out in saying and advising students over here. But any final advice for all the aspiring designers or designers like me also who are already in the industry? Any sort of a words of wisdom where we want to conclude this conversation?
Uh, I think I actually said most of it. There's nothing very profound that is coming to my I would just say one thing which I kind of try to follow is that celebrate the past and design the future.
Hmm.
Um, and what I mean when I say this is that I'm a sucker for retro design or things done in the past the way they were done. Is because they were done with a very naive attitude. If you look at some of the most
Hmm.
iconic cars or products, be it a Remington typewriter or be it Fiat Cinquecento or a Mini or things that were done in the past with where technology was not up to date. When you look at those products and how long they've stood the test of time, and why, any question why they have stood the test of time and why people still connect with those. I mean, even when I go out in my Mini outside, a small kid, that which is 3 years old, which has no clue, or 2 years old, which has no clue about cars, is instantly able to fall in love with that car or
Hmm.
connect with that product. The product is not marketing itself, but people just do kind of connect with it. And you see the state of design today, and you see so much of chaos and so much of halabu or whatever you call that word is, and you just take a step back and relax, and you question yourself, like, how can I use the tools that I have at my disposal today but approach design with the same naivety as in the
Hmm.
past, to create that beauty or create that connect with people. I think that is what is missing, in my opinion, today, because we are in this rat race and this kind of stuff. I think if we can do that, I think we will be doing something new and something fresh, because that innocence of design is something that I personally really love and like, and would like to create modern classics rather than fast food. So I don't know if you can somehow students can sensitize themselves towards that. And again, as I always say, like, switch off, take some time out to kind of observe the whole journey of design itself, um, they'd be much better informed for the future, much better
Mm.
prepared for the future, and not feel scared or intimidated by the new tools coming or technology or the way design is kind of headed. And I think we need more and more people doing that in order to have good design out there. Because the less number of people that do that, we'll always have mediocre design out there. You know,
Mm.
if you really want good design, we really need more and more people sensitizing to this way of looking at things and not just fast, fast, fast.
Mm. Wow, man, that was a very powerful thought, I would say. Yeah, actually, I was actually thinking when I asked you this question, I was like, Nirmit has said most of the things. Abhi kya? But still, you said something which is so powerfully, provoking in a way, thought provoking. It's amazing because, as you rightly said, that thing is missing. Everything is falling in that rat race, and that genuineness, that timeless beauty of that sense of simplicity, it's getting missed somewhere, I guess. And yeah, celebrate the past and design the future, right?
Yeah.
So I am gonna make this as the title of this podcast. Awesome, Nirmit, this has been a very very enjoyable conversation. I didn't even realize that we have been speaking for almost 2 hours now. And time just flew. And that's the validation of the kind of conversation we had. And it's just amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing so much of knowledge and wisdom with all of us. I'm truly grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Saket. You've been brilliant as a host, and I think it's a very nice way that you conduct this. And just more power to you, kudos, and I hope you get more and more amazing perspectives on your podcast. And let's keep in touch. And
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And this conversation won't end over here, I feel. हम लोग और भी बातें करते रहेंगे for sure. And actually, the best part for me is that through all these design podcast episodes, I get to learn all these amazing stories, and I get to know these people, like amazing people like you. I have always known you, by name, and I've heard your stories and your experiences. I have also seen your work here and there. But thanks to this platform as such, that it is giving me an opportunity to have one-to-one conversation with you. So, thanks to this platform. Thanks for your kind words, and thanks for being here.
thanks a
We'll
lot.
stay in touch.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Saket. It's
Okay.
been great.